Extra, extra, read all about it. Real estate investors targeted by Congress. You're not going to want to miss today's episode of Mortgage Mondays. We got all the hot deets for you right here, right off the presses. What's going on, everyone? This is David Green, your host of the BiggerPockets Real Estate Podcast and Mortgage Mondays, here today with my business partner and the broker at the One Brokerage, Christian Batchelor. Christian, how are you doing?
I'm good. Some unfortunate news, but we got a great article that we're going to break down for you guys.
Yep. Hopefully this never comes to fruition, but if it does, we want you to be ready. Christian and I are going to be breaking down a new piece of legislation that is taking aim at real estate investors in an effort to try to cure home unaffordability. All that and more on today's episode of Mortgage Monday. Welcome back to Mortgage Mondays, everybody. I'm here with Christian Batchelor, my partner and the broker of the One Brokerage. How are you, Christian?
I'm doing good. We got some fun news articles to go through written by some of our friends at BP. So check this one out, guys. We'll link the article in the description as well.
Yeah, that's right. It kind of depends how you classify fun. It's definitely good information here, but there is some trouble looming for real estate investors in the legislative branch of the U.S. government. We're going to be talking about it, as well as how it could impact your ability to build wealth through real estate investing.
But before we get into that, are you not sure how to become a successful investor in today's market? Join hundreds of investors just like you as they pick a market, analyze deals, overcome common challenges, and get their next winning deal under contract. From murky investors to aspiring Airbnb hosts and even small multifamily landlords, there's a community for everyone. Choose your bootcamp today at biggerpockets.com/boot. That's BOOT. Now, back to Mortgage Mondays.
So let's start off with this new bill that's being proposed. It is being proposed as a way of creating more home affordability for tenants, basically. It talks about homeowners and homeownership protection, but really the gist of this bill, called the Affordable Housing and Homeownership Protection Act, is to make housing less expensive. What's being proposed here is to tax real estate investors every time they buy a property past 15. So here's how that would look. If you have 16 to 25 single-family residences, you pay an additional tax of 1% of the purchase price. When you get to 26 to 100 single family properties, you would pay an additional 3% of the purchase price. And if you get to having over 100, you would pay an additional 5% of the purchase price. Now, to put this into context, 3% of the purchase price is more than most buyer's agents are making on a deal. So you're going to be paying the government more than the buyer's agent is getting. And this is coming at the same time that legislation is in the works of trying to limit your ability to have the seller pay for your buyer's agent. So what they're trying to do is make you pay for your own buyer's agent and make you pay a tax on these homes that you buy. Now, luckily, this is starting at people that are buying more than 15 properties. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how this would affect strategy going forward, how this would affect financing property going forward. Do you have any thoughts on this so far?
The biggest result that I think this will lead to is actually summarized really well in the article on BP here. I think it's funny, David and I were talking just beforehand of this, and it's going to lead to investors not wanting to buy low value properties, which means all those rentals that they're trying to provide for people, right, in low income households, right, the people who get Section 8 vouchers, whatever the case is, if you're trying to stay under 15 properties before you get hit with this tax, you're not going to want to buy $100,000 properties. You're going to want to buy big properties, right? If you're an investor, 3, 4, 5 units, commercial, whatever the case is, so that you maximize the leverage and buying power you get before you get taxed, right?
Right. So the problem here is if you get penalized per property, you're going to have less properties, but more expensive. Because what we're really all as investors trying to get as two things. We want equity and we want cash flow. Well, I could get more equity and more cash flow if I could get more expensive properties. But the beginners all start off getting the cheaper property. So this is going to cause investors to buy less of those. And that means that the homes that are going to be available for the primary residence people, they're only going to be buying the worst properties in the worst areas. Like right off the bat, this is one of those things that politicians don't always think all the way through. The next question is it even true that investors are snapping up all the homes and that's the reason why homes are not affordable? Or could there be more factors like more people turning of home buying age every single year that need a place to live and less houses being built to meet that need? Well, researchers at Roofstock, this is all from a BiggerPockets article written by Andrew Serios. He did a great job here based on the bill that we described earlier, says researchers at Roofstock estimated that large-scale landlords today own about 450,000 of the roughly 20 million single-family rentals in the U.S. While this is more than investors have have owned in the past, it represents less than 2.5% of all the single family rentals and less than 0.5% of all the single family homes, including those that are owner occupied. Okay. So investors own less than 0.5% of owner occupied homes, but they're the ones being targeted in this bill. Now, moving into this a little bit deeper, what the problem really is here is huge hedge funds. It's these massive conglomerations that can raise money at much cheaper rates than you or I, Christian, can ever be able to borrow, because we're not able to raise tens of billions of dollars. The more money you raise, the less interest you have to pay on that money because you're solving a problem for people. If you're a huge insurance company that's got a ton of money and you have to lend it out somewhere to get a return, you're not going to get a 15% return on that money. That's what you get if you're lending out a small amount of money, like $50,000. So they have an advantage if they're able to get a lot of money and then they're able to buy these houses. They also have an advantage because they can wait longer than you or me. We don't have unlimited funds like they basically have. They can buy properties that don't cash flow and just wait 20 years and make a bunch of money off of the appreciation as they bought them at lower interest rates than we did. While the BiggerPockets investor doesn't have that luxury. They're still going to work every single day, taking their lunchbox to the coal mine. They got a W-2 job. This is something that they're planning for their retirement, but they can't bleed money every single month to get there. It doesn't make sense. Basically, they're targeting the wrong person. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's funny. I think he just did an awesome job in this article because there's a lot of kind of clickbaity that happens here, right? He referenced one article that was in the Kansas City Beacon that said companies own 8,000 Kansas City area homes, right? Creating intense competition for residents. However, just like you said, David, that's true. 5 companies do own 8,000 homes in Kansas City out of the 300,000 homes that are available on the market, right? So you still do the math there, right? 8,000 out of 300. Like 8,000 sounds like a lot. That's a big clickbaity. A lot of people want to see that information until you realize it is a fraction, right? It's a small fraction of what's actually in the area, which is not really the side of the story that's been told. And I do think there is, probably a push for this so that potentially bills like this could be brought out that do punish. It's not really punishing the BlackRocks because they're such a small percentage. It's punishing the you and I, Davids, right? It's the more than 15 properties that, people who own BiggerPockets own. That's going to require us to kind of reanalyze our portfolios and make sure we're, maximizing that first 15 if something like this were to actually get signed off on.
Yeah, I wonder if that'll become a phrase in the BiggerPockets world, the first 15. There's something to be said if this does pass. So here's some other unintended consequences. Let's say somebody does own 15 properties and maybe they're small properties. Like owning $1,500,000 houses is not an incredible financial feat. If you can save up $20,000 15 times over a period of 5 to 10 years, that's not crazy impossible to go do. Well, every time they want to flip a house or they want to buy a property to burr, what they end up doing is going into the properties that are in the worst shape, the biggest blights on the communities. They have lower value, so they bring in less property taxes. And then they go in and they improve them with their capital, their energy, their resources, and they sell them at a higher price to someone else. Now, everybody always focuses on the profit the flipper makes, and no one likes it. But what they also do is bring a crappy property back onto the market as a nicer property that someone pays more for, and that generates more property taxes for that community. It provides a better house for someone to live in, and most importantly, it improves the value of all the other homes in that neighborhood. If that same house flipper that's providing that service of rehabbing these houses goes away because the government's not going to step in and do it, or they have to pay an extra 3 to 5% to buy that house, that eats into their profit margin. They probably don't do it. Well, who's going to be left to buy these properties? It's going to be maybe the newbies. Are those the people that we want owning properties in the low income areas where you have the most risk? The person who's stepping into this that doesn't know how to do it? I might be comfortable advising an experienced investor to get into questionable neighborhoods because they're a little more savvy. I definitely don't want to tell that first time homeowner or maybe someone that has one property that they should move into these very challenging markets and try to pull it off. So that scares me. This is also going to reduce the demand for properties in low income neighborhoods. I don't know if that's a great strategy for the entire economy because like you just said, people that are good at investing, like if this passes, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell off all my cheap properties and I'm going to 1031 8 houses that are priced $300,000 or below, and I'm going to get into a $2 million property or $3 million property to maximize how many of that 15. Well, now all of the energy, the capital, the attention, the resources is going to go into the nicer neighborhoods and make those nicer as the rich get richer. And then the worst neighborhoods are going to slowly start to get ignored as the poor get poor. And I don't love that end result.
Which is ironic because it from the general perspective of this, that's exactly what this is trying to avoid, right? It's trying to increase the lower income areas. It's trying to up a competition of people being able to rent, and there's increase in Section 8 vouchers coming. Like all that on the surface looks like it's trying to increase those areas. But just like you said, David, when people write bills that aren't in the industry or have this understanding, it's doing the exact opposite. You're exactly right. It's just going to create intense competition for better houses, right?
Yeah, let's talk about how this could affect the future of real estate investing. So I, for years, have said when you have an economic crash, like right after 2010, I'm okay if people want to get into C or even D class neighborhoods if they have to. If you've just had a crash and there's nowhere to go but up, if you're buying into these troubling neighborhoods, you can get out when the prices go up. You're not locked in there forever. What I don't like is when you're at the top of a market and someone goes into a D class or a C class or a C minus type of a neighborhood, because now you don't control when you get out. You can't get out if the prices go down, or even if they stay the same, you might have nobody to sell it to. So there's this temptation when housing is expensive to buy cheaper houses because it feels safer. It's not. When housing is expensive, that's actually when you want to be in the A and the B class neighborhoods because they're affected a lot less if prices drop. If a bill like this passes, what I think happens is you have to buy in better neighborhoods. Like the location of the property becomes more heavily weighted in the algorithm of where to buy real estate than just the cash flow. Things like the 1% rule tend to work out better on cheaper properties, which is why a lot of investors start to play in those pools, especially when you're new. You can get in, you can learn the fundamentals at a cheaper price, and then you can sell it to somebody else and you can move on to something better. But if you see all of the money in real estate investing move away from cheaper priced homes and it moves towards the more expensive stuff, that will change the way that people are buying homes because you might not be able to get out of that environment. Is there anything else that you could think of that investors need to be aware of if bills like this pass? Because a lot of the people listening, they're not at 15 yet.
I'm just thinking of this. Obviously, we're on Mortgage Monday here, guys. This is more of a current event episode, but bringing it back just to specify how this could impact your mortgage. This is going to be, if you are over 15 properties, I'm just seeing, on your closing, we just did a loan estimate review on our previous episode. Like this is going to be a new line item. You're going to have a 3, 4, 5% tax item now on your closing costs. And one of the most common questions is, what's my cash to close, right? And those investors are not going to be happy with that increase there, right? That's going to make a mortgage harder to get. That's going to create some pain points there, right? At closing, that's your furnishing, allotment, or that's your renovations budget that you have, right? One of the first things that you said, David, is all these crazy ideas and these, pie in the sky dreams are coming from these people trying to accomplish one main thing. They're trying to make housing more affordable. And just like how we've seen the last 3 years, common sense should tell you as interest rates go up, especially as quickly as they did, prices should come down fairly quickly. If that's just in a bubble, right? There's no other external factors. Rates tripling in 3 years should bring prices down. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't. There are certain markets that did get impacted, but for the most part, many markets in America held strong when rates went from 2.5% to 7%. We still see significant competition. Obviously, David and I being in California, we still see properties that get 20 offers on them, which is crazy when rates are at 8%, right? But what you said, David, is if there can just be incentives for builders to build, we need to realign the supply imbalance that we have. And I love the final thoughts of this article. If you guys are following along with us on this article, literally says they interviewed the National Association of Home Builders and they found, this is in May of 2021, on a dollar cost basis, and it's probably more now in 2024, applied to the current average price of a new home, which in the country is $394,000, regulations during building accounted for $93,000 of the final house price. That's 25 to 30% of the home price is the builder having to expense just to get past regulations. If we want to incentivize home builders, instead of trying to tax new investors, how about we just give a little of incentive back to the home builders and make it easier to build, right? Let's get houses up there. If the House and the Senate and everything are so serious and so considering getting more houses out there to bring down the cost of real estate, let's do it at the source, the builder. I think that makes the most sense, and I think that's a perfect conclusion on this article.
Christian, one other thing I want to bring up before we get out of here. I wonder if this bill passes and then another one comes where you can't have more than 5 houses. If people start combining together and buying houses in the name of a corporation that they're an owner of, as opposed to buying the house in their own name, you might see this leading to people going into fractionalized ownership as opposed to individual ownership that we have. And owning parts of houses becomes more like owning stocks. That's probably a workaround that I can see people getting into. And of course, corporations eventually will work themselves right into that. But when it comes to getting loan for property, do you think that that could be a thing where we have to have loan products in the future for people that are trying to buy the house as a group?
I definitely think that is typically how commercial lending will work, especially for syndications and you know, funds that are put together. But yeah, for residential real estate, you can have up to 4 people on an application, right? So there would absolutely have to be a change if that starts to become the new norm, which I'm very curious to see. You know, sometimes you wish you could jump ahead, you know, a decade and just take a peek into your industry and see what it looks like. That is something that I would not be surprised to see, David. I think both you and I have talked both personally and on this show about the potential move to fractionalized ownership in real estate. And I think it's a fascinating topic.
There you go. But hey, we want to know, what do you guys think about this bill? Is it something you're concerned of? And is there more that we're not bringing up that needs to be covered? Let us know in the comments what you think about legislation like this and what you see for the future of real estate ownership. So thanks for joining us here on Mortgage Monday. Christian, appreciate you being here today. If people want to reach out to you and talk more about what they should consider when getting a loan, what loan options might be best for them, how can they do so?
Yeah, as always, guys, on Instagram at The One Broker, on our website, theonebrokerage.com. Click contact us in the top right. You can get in touch with the team member.
You can find out about me at davidgreen24.com. Just remember the E at the end of green, or on social media at davidgreen24, or you can send me an email on the BiggerPockets website. You might be able to find me there. Thanks, everybody. If you've got a minute, check out another episode of Mortgage Monday. And before you leave, make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on today's show to let us know what you'd like us to talk about more and what you think about this legislation. And we will see you on the next episode of Mortgage Mondays.